Hey everybody and welcome back to another video. Today we are reacting to The American Revolution by OverSimplified. Now this channel was recommended to me by AMESLAN1. I am not going to try to pronounce your name because I fear that I will completely butcher it. But he commented a bit more. I'll stick the comment up on screen, but he said, if you like history, my favorite YouTube channel is OverSimplified channel, which does animated cartoon history and short summaries about different world histories like the American Revolutionary War, American Civil War, French Revolution, Russian Revolution, and it goes on. So I love my history and I'm a simple guy. I really like the simple things in life. Don't give me a flash car, give me a pickup truck, don't give me a mansion, give me a house that I can maintain and look after and live in happily with my family. That's all I want. I'm a simple bloke who like simple things. So what can be better than a bit of simple history? So we're going to get into that today. Also, if you haven't done so already, please make sure you hit the subscribe button. And if you're feeling extra frisky, you may as well hit the like button as well. I'm just going to have a sip of my coffee. There is a buy me a coffee link in the description. Please don't feel any obligation to buy me a coffee, but if you are feeling like you want to support the channel, the link is in the description. And without further ado, let's get into The American Revolution by OverSimplified.
Holy smokes. Christopher Columbus, that is no way to address the king and queen of Spain. What is wrong with you? Okay, so you know how we're looking for a new trade route to India, right? Right. And the earth is round, right? Right. So I'm thinking we can just sail the other way around the planet, right? Yeah. So I set sail, right? And I reach India, right? Right. Wrong. Wrong. I did not reach India. I did not. All right, get to the point. Did you know there's a whole nother freaking continent out there? Okay, and do you think I should care about this? Why? Oh, I'm sorry, did I forget to mention there's gold everywhere? Gold? Columbus landed in Central America in October 1492, and he had the time of his life. And by that I mean he went on a huge theft and murder spree. He stole gold, jewelry, people, and a hammock. And then he returned to show off all of his riches, including a few previously undiscovered items such as tobacco, the pineapple, turkeys, and a hammock. Now I know what you're thinking, but oversimplified, Columbus didn't discover America, the Vikings did. And you'd be partially right. In the 11th century, Leif Erikson was the first European to land in America. But hey, if you love Vikings so much, then why don't you check out today's sponsor?
Okay, I'll fast forward his sponsor.
Now, where was I? Oh yeah, Columbus, time of his life, hammock. And suddenly, Columbus was on to explore and conquer the New World. After a couple centuries of warring with...
This is a two-part video. I might just put it together and make one long video, or the second part of the video will be uploaded after this one, so you'll see which one happens
the
first.
natives and each other, the European powers had claimed quite a lot of land, including this area, which both the English and the French claimed as theirs. One day the French said, I'm going to build some forts along here. And the English were like, could you not? And the French said, sorry, but no, I could not. And they went ahead and built their forts, which pissed off the English, so they sent an up-and-coming British lieutenant colonel by the name of George Washington with a combined force of British troops and Native Americans. After a short battle, the French commander said, all right, we surrender. Okay, boys, pack it up. They're surrendering. Oh, sorry, was I not meant to split his head open with the tomahawk? Don't worry, it's not like this will start a 7-year-long major global conflict. And what happened next was a 7-year-long major global conflict, which Great Britain won. At the peace negotiations, Spain gave up Florida, while France gave up all of its territories in North America. But Britain's victory came at a cost, a £60 million cost. They were now broke.
Flippin' heck, £60 million back then. I wonder what that is in today's money. That's a lot
of debt and had to come up with some way to repay it. So they went to the colonies and said, okay, listen up. So a huge part of the war was spent protecting you from the French, and now we have no money because of it. So I'm not sure what you're saying here. Okay, so we spent a lot of money protecting you from the French, right? Right. And now we're broke.
We've all been in that position. I spent 600 flippin' pounds to help you move and do all this stuff to your new flat and everything. And?
That certainly is a pickle. Listen to me. We spent all of our money protecting you, and now we need money. Can you please pay us back some money?
No. So
okay,
good.
We're just going to go ahead and tax you. In 1764, Britain introduced the Sugar Act, forcing the colonists to import sugar and molasses exclusively from the British and to pay duties on them. Then a year later, they introduced the extremely controversial Stamp Act.
Bloody taxes. Taxes. Ugh. Who likes taxes?
Like this. Hello, shop.
Not me.
Hello, Mr. Bungleberry. Here's the deed for your new shack. Stamp. That'll be 3 pence, please.
Stamp.
Wait, what was that? It's the new tax. I get a stamp on any paper or documentation I make, and you have to pay for it. Would you like to see this pamphlet that explains everything? Yes, please.
Stamp.
Okay. Stamp. 2 pence, please. This is awful. You know what? Just give me a deck of cards so I can go gamble my pain away. Okay. No.
No.
Don't do it. Stamp. Obviously, the colonists were like, hey, my dudes, this new tax legislation right here, this is BS. Until now, they had enjoyed relative freedom to rule themselves, and now suddenly Britain was asserting its control. They were especially unhappy because they didn't have any representatives in the parliament that was levying taxes on them. So they protested.
Piss off,
Leaders
it
gave
said.
fiery speeches. British goods were boycotted, and anyone loyal to the British found themselves increasingly harassed. The whole thing actually began to take quite a toll on British business, and after just a couple years, the British were forced to repeal the Stamp Act. But we still desperately need money. What should we do? We could try taxing the colonies. Great idea. Wait, didn't we literally just try that and it failed miserably? Man, look at me. I look fabulous. Have you ever seen such a handsome boy? No sirree, Georgie. No way. You're the handsomest, smartest, most popular king that ever lived. And
This guy's brilliant with these videos. I think after this, I'll be hooked on these. I love this sort of
everybody
thing.
likes you. You're doing such a good job. Your Majesty? Oh, you're still here. Get the hell out. So in 1766, the British made a declaration saying, we can do what we want because we're in charge and you can all go suck it. Then they levied a whole bunch of new taxes on the Americans via import duties. Glass? There's a tax for that. Lead? There's a tax for that. Paper? Tea? Oil? There's a tax for that.
Look at the
Once again,
picture for
Americans boycotted
oil.
British goods. British business felt the pinch and the British had to back down. Alright, this is ridiculous. They're my colonies and I have to be able to assert my control. Repeal all the new taxes except for the one on tea. Also send 1,000 troops to Boston to take control. Oh, and make the colonists pay for them. And as British troops arrived, the tension in Boston was palpable. You could cut it with a knife, and it was all about to come to a head. On March 5th, a band of local patriots began heckling a British guard at the customs house. More and more Americans joined in the
Posh
heckling,
boy.
while more British troops turned up in support of their comrade. Snowballs were thrown at the British. The snowballs turned to
I think this is how history should be taught at school, because when I was at school, I hated history. And I don't know whether it's because I'm older that I love history now, or the fact that I can choose how I'd like to learn about something rather than reading it from a textbook and being bored about it. Like, there's so much awesome ways and like awesome information out there presented in such a great way that I think it would make kids a bit more excited about the topic. I mean, my son likes history a bit, but my daughter's no, she's not too keen. So I think there's a great, like, we're very lucky nowadays with how we can absorb content.
the rocks to oyster shells. The soldiers
Oyster
outnumbered,
shells.
panicked. One thing leads to another, and you can see where this is
Uh-oh.
going. 5 civilians were killed. The Patriot press throughout the colonies declared the Boston Massacre an unwarranted crime committed against the people of Boston by the cruel British, and the anger continued to grow. A British revenue schooner that ran aground in Rhode Island was burned by the locals. When it came to light that the governor of Massachusetts supported the suppression of the colonists, his house was burned by the locals. And next, the colonists would set their sights on the remaining tax on tea. On December 16th, 1773, a band of patriots known as the Sons of Liberty disguised themselves as Native Americans, marched down to Boston Harbor, boarded a British merchant ship loaded with tea, and in front of thousands of spectators, threw nearly 10,000 pounds worth of tea overboard. The British were disgusted, and they punished Massachusetts with a
drinking it.
vengeance. They dissolved its General Assembly, revoked their charter, and sent 3,000 more troops to occupy the city, meaning Boston and Massachusetts were now essentially under the direct rule of Great Britain. And oh boy, were the people pissed. The other colonies saw what was happening and worried they might be next. So they called a brain trust to decide what to do. 56 delegates from 12 colonies gathered and met in Philadelphia at the First Continental Congress. And the roll call read like a who's who of America's finest thinkers. I'm talking lawyers extraordinaire Johnny A. and Johnny J, experienced military commander George Washington, businessman and future alcoholic
He
beverage
does these
Samuel
videos
Adams,
so
Harriet
well.
Ryder, Patty H, guy who married a rich lady, Big J Dickinson.
Big
And while
J.
they weren't present at the first Congress, soon names like James Madison, Benjamin Franklin, Thomas Jefferson, and much later Alexander Hamilton would all serve time in the Continental Congress. The question now, though, was what to do about the British. After much bitter debate and disagreement, they eventually agreed on an amazing solution. They would simply ask the British to stop. Can you stop? No. It didn't work. Okay, then tell the local militias to start arming and be ready at a minute's notice. And across the colonies, these Minutemen stood ready for the beginning.
There was a conflict between the colonists, wasn't there? That there were some people that were fighting the British to get fairer laws, but then there were other people who were fighting for independence, wasn't there? So there was also a little bit of internal conflict, wasn't there? I may be mistaken. That's just what I know. I'm not big on the American history. I apologize. I'm learning about it as we watch now.
of the American Revolutionary War. Now, having your colonies in open rebellion is one thing. Once they start arming themselves, that's when it really hits the fan. So British General Thomas
Shit hit
Gage
the
ordered
fan.
700 troops from Boston out into the rebel-controlled Massachusetts countryside to destroy stores of arms and ammunition held by the rebels in Concord. The British set out in the middle of the night. Patriots including Paul Revere rode ahead to warn that the British were coming, giving the rebels time to prepare. The two sides met in Lexington as
that
the
green's
sun began
bright,
to
isn't
rise.
it?
They faced off against each other, and in the confusion, somebody shot first. The shot heard around the world marked the beginning of the American War of Independence. The rebels were outnumbered and had to fall back to Concord as the British split up to search for rebel supplies. However, more and more Patriot rebels kept showing up, and this time it was the British who were outnumbered as more fighting kicked off in Concord. The most professional army in the world was forced to flee back to Boston at the hands of local, poorly trained militiamen, and all along the British route back to Boston, Patriot rebels continued to gather and open fire on the retreating British. When the British reached Boston, the rebel militias surrounded them. Boston and the British were now under siege as small land and naval skirmishes continued around the city. And the British would suffer another embarrassing blow, this time in upstate New York. Colonel Benedict Arnold concocted a plan to take the British stronghold Fort Ticonderoga, which held a large amount of guns and ammunition. He set off towards the fort.
Look at the titles.
British stronghold Fort
What?
Ticonderoga, which held a large amount of guns and ammunition.
Hella guns, hella
He set off towards the
ammunition.
fort
So
alone, hoping
good.
to recruit men along the way, when he came across the Green Mountain Boys, led by Ethan Allen, who, as it turned out, had the exact same plan he did. So they decided to work together. But I'm in charge. No, 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 I'm in charge.
All right.
No, I'm in charge.
All right.
This went on for some time, until the Green Mountain Boys threatened to go home, and Arnold had to concede. The group raided the fort at night while the Redcoats were asleep, and they caught them completely by surprise, taking the fort and all of its munitions.
Fart
with almost
noises
no
and
resistance.
everything. I love it.
Wow, great job, Ethan. Very impressive. By the way, what happened to that other guy we sent to take the fort? Who? Benedict Arnold. Never heard of him. Ouch. What the fuck? Nobody knew what was going on. The colonies were in open rebellion, and for now, they even seemed to be winning. So King George fired General Gage, replaced him with General William Howe, and ordered the rebellion to be put down immediately. Okay, the British are definitely going to retaliate for all of this, so we should probably put together a proper army. First, we need to pick a commander-in-chief, and I think we can all agree that that job should go to the man, the myth, the legend, George Washington. My friends, I am humbled and honored that you would consider me for such an important role. I
Like
did
an
not
Oscar
expect
speech.
for this. All right, you've been showing up in a military uniform every day for the last 10 months. We all know you wanted this, so cut the crap, George. Dude.
Dude.
Uncool. So Washington began his journey up to Boston to take command of the newly established Continental Army, just as the British made their first major attempt to break the siege. They made plans to take the high ground on Bunker Hill, but spies warned the Continentals of the British plans, so they fortified Bunker Hill and set up defensive positions on nearby Breed's Hill. The day of the battle came, and as the British advanced, a barrage of Continental gunfire was opened up on them. Twice they tried to climb the hill, twice they were pushed back. The battle lasted 3 hours until the Continentals finally ran out of ammunition and had to retreat.
I was going to say they ran out of ammo.
Technically a British
I remembered
victory,
some
they
stuff.
suffered nearly 1,000 casualties to the Continental's 400. The colonists showed the British that this wasn't just a rebellion, it was war, and they were ready for it. But one thing they weren't sure about was why they were fighting. Well, some radicals were starting to throw around the I word. Most
There you
hoped
go.
to eventually repair their relationship with Great Britain. So they sent a letter to King George saying, "Hey man, looks
See?
like
I did remember some stuff.
things aren't going your way. Remove the taxes and let's be friends. I'm gonna kick your ass." Send that to the colonies. Your Majesty, your handwriting is terrible. Are you sure? Just do it. What does it say? He's gonna lick my... Gross. So for the remainder of the year, small engagements continued to occur around the colonies. The British burned down the towns of Falmouth, Massachusetts, and Norfolk, Virginia, as revenge for earlier anti-British
so good.
incidents. These actions played right into the hands of Patriot propaganda. Overseas, the British were seen as brutes, and the French and Spanish would soon begin sending supplies to the rebel cause. During this time, there was also minor fighting going on between Patriot and Loyalist militias in the southern colonies. Benedict Arnold was still on a mission to win some personal glory for himself, so he headed up an attempt to invade Canada in a two-pronged attack. The Continentals managed to capture some British forts and the city of Montreal, but a harsh snowstorm with some smallpox on the side saw them defeated
Some
and pushed
smallpox
back
on
at
the
Quebec
side.
City, and they were forced to retreat all the way to Fort Ticonderoga. Speaking of which, remember all those guns and ammunition?
Hella
This guy's
guns,
got a
hella
plan for what to do
ammunition.
with it.
Yep.
He uses oxen to drag 120,000 pounds of artillery for 2 months through the harsh winter, 300 miles all the way to Washington and his Continental Army surrounding Boston. Boom. Washington's got himself some big guns, which is fortunate because up until now his army had been suffering through the cold winter, not knowing when the siege would end. Now, they could make a move. Washington wanted to launch a full assault on the city, but his junior officers felt the British were too fortified, and to his credit, Washington was great at hearing and taking on board the ideas of others. Instead, the Continentals worked through the night, setting the guns up on Dorchester Heights, overlooking the city. And when dawn broke and the British saw the guns, they knew they were toast. Their positions were completely exposed. It was checkmate. They had no choice but to abandon the city. 120 ships carried 9,000 redcoats and 2,000 loyalists away to an unknown fate, and Washington had his first victory of the war. Washington then moved his army to New York, knowing that when the British returned, they would probably land there. In the meantime, a friendly-looking old man by the name of Thomas Paine had written and published a pamphlet called Common Sense, in which he advocated for total independence from Great Britain. It spread across the colonies like wildfire, and to this day remains the best-selling title in America. It was read aloud in taverns and meeting halls like wildfire, and to this day remains the best-selling title in America.
Proportional to population, okay.
It was read aloud in taverns and meeting halls and brought the idea of independence into the mainstream. Congress began to seriously consider the idea. Thomas Jefferson was selected to write up an official Declaration of Independence, and he went hard, writing that all men are created equal, with certain inalienable rights, including life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Of course, Jefferson had over 100 slaves, but we don't have to talk about that. On the 2nd
I didn't know that. I did not know that. I was like, yeah.
Congress voted unanimously in favor of independence, and John Adams declared that the 2nd of July would go down as the most remembered day in American history. Then a couple days later, independence actually came into effect. The United States of America was born. There was no turning back now. The Americans tore down a statue of King George in New York and melted him down into 42,000 musket balls.
Oh, they're gonna kill him with their own king's statue.
To the British, it was treason, and if the king had his way, Washington and all of Congress would be hung. Speaking of the British, guess who's back? The king sent an intimidating force of 130 warships and 25,000 men to New York. Washington knew that taking on the most powerful military in the world wouldn't be easy. The British set up camp on Staten Island as the Americans dug into defensive positions around Brooklyn Heights, waiting for an attack to come. But the British just waited, wearing down their opponent's nerve while building their own strength. At one point, they launched a big scary artillery barrage and then said, you know, if I was you right now, I'd probably sue for peace. But Washington told them to shove it. The Americans kept holding out for what was coming, and when they finally hit, they hit hard. 15,000 British troops approached the American position, and the two...
That is insane to me, those pitched battles where they line up and then they just like take turns firing at each other, really. It was pretty... You had to have some nerve. I mean, okay, you're fighting for a really good reason, but still, I mean, put yourself in those shoes. It would be hard to just stand there. And it's okay when you're doing the shooting, but then when it's their turn, you're pretty much sitting ducks.
Two sides fired on each other in massive rows. But what the Americans didn't realize was they were only fighting a decoy. The main British force was going around to flank the Americans from behind, and when they arrived, they inflicted heavy casualties. The Americans panicked and retreated back to Brooklyn Heights, where they then found themselves trapped between the British army and the river. It looked as though the war was already lost, but luckily, instead of attacking, the British decided to dig in for a siege, and then a thick fog set in, allowing Washington's army to escape across the river unimpeded. The British continued to chase and engage the Americans up Manhattan, and the Americans suffered defeat after defeat after defeat. It was a disaster. Washington's leadership was called into question, as thousands of American POWs were left to rot as traitors. Washington's army fled through New Jersey all the way down to Pennsylvania. Rarely had an army been so badly beaten, yet survived to fight another day.
Right, so that was pretty long. It's so far at 18 minutes 44 seconds. So what I'll do is I'll split it up into two parts. I'll put part 2 in the next video. So yeah, if you want to have a look at that, check it out. But I think this is brilliant. I think this is awesome because not only does it teach you a little bit, but it sparked an interest for me. It sparked an interest for me to go and do some research now and go and read up about the whole war and everything, because I do love this sort of history thing. There's a couple YouTubers I watch on my private account called Nugget Noggin and Aquadigger, where they go out and they do metal detecting and diving and stuff, and they found all the old bullets and stuff from the Revolutionary War and stuff, and I think that's amazing. I'm like, wow, it must be. So I would like to learn a bit more about it, and I will learn about it a bit more because now this has sparked my interest to that point. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed the video. Come back for the next one. We'll go into part 2 on the next video, which will be uploaded in about an hour. And if you're watching this on another day, it's already up and ready to go. So I'll stick it up in one of these corners, and yeah, enjoy. Peace.